Hello, neighbor. I'm Robert Burns, and welcome once again to another edition of Sound Off Louisiana. We are here for installment 4 of our fascinating interviews with the former Alcohol and Tobacco Control Commissioner, Murphy Painter. When we last concluded installment 3, Mr. Painter had just gotten some unfortunate news from the governor's office that he was no longer going to be in that capacity, and also he had covered briefly some issues with the search warrant that had been issued by the Louisiana Office of Inspector General, and it's my understanding that he'd like to go over a little bit more on that search warrant and then look at the employment opportunities thereafter. And so without further ado, Mr. Painter, I'm going to turn it over to you. Welcome back.
Thank you, Robert. As Robert explained, we went over real briefly in the last deal about the scenario, how all this come about in the search warrant. I was fired on August the 13th, Friday the 13th, and then the next big deal, I spent 4 or 5 miserable days there pondering a lot, but that Wednesday the 17th of August, there was a big news flash and headlines and everything else based on an affidavit that had been filed publicly in the clerk of court's office, and with an affidavit that was put together by Inspector General Agent Shane Evans, explaining their probable cause for the search warrant, and also the what they had found as a result of the search warrant that was done on, according to them, on August the 17th of 2010. And this is mainly for law professors and Inspector General wannabes, any law enforcement officer, any AUSA, USAs that have any integrity whatsoever in the world. But I want to explain the search warrant situation. As I have explained, on the 13th of August, after I was let go at the state capitol on the 4th floor in the Executive Counsel Stephen Wagaspak's office, in the presence of Elizabeth Murrell and then the head of state police, Mike Edmiston, I was told to go find my way home, and they took everything that was of any state property from me. Well, that was around 7 o'clock. It was according to notes and stuff that I found somewhere around 8:30. Stephen Street, Greg Farries, Shane Evans, and others, a lot of members of ATC, were in my office at ATC. Now, when you do a search warrant, supposedly you reserve or preserve the scene until you get a search warrant to go search that place to look for supposedly evidence. Well, all those people plus ATC personnel were in and out of my office on Friday night. Now, I don't find this out till 2 years later or so, once I was indicted and got access to documents and stuff through subpoenas, but basically they were in my office and they were searching my office. Now, they can say they wasn't, they can say they were preserving it, whatever they want. They were searching my office, and 2 years, like I said, 2 years later after I was indicted, so that would have been somewhere around in 2012, late 2012, after going through or getting the information off of computers, I took about 6 months, maybe even 8 months, where I went through 75,000 plus emails from maybe 10 or 12 different people that I got in discovery information. And lo and behold, in one of those emails was a email from a captain at ATC to the now head of ATC that took my place that night, or that was appointed to take my place on the 13th, that they had finally secured my office, and that Inspector General Agent Shane Evans had taken my laptop computer, had taken my desktop computer with him when he left ATC on that night. Now, again, for 2 years, and again because of the allegations that was in the search warrant and all the stuff that had filtered out through the press, I'd been pressing the Inspector General. Once I was indicted, I'd been pressing the AUSAs and the U.S. Attorney and to produce the slip, the evidence slip that would have shown the date and time and where my desktop computer had been found. Because in the beginning, I no way did anything ever match up to what was being said. But anyway, so now we got Shane Evans taking my desktop computer on August the 13th. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Shane Evans goes, files an affidavit and gets a search warrant to go back to my office and search, looking for what other than my desktop computer. Now, my laptop computer, my cell phone, my gun, my credentials, my keys to that office, the codes and all that stuff to that office had been given to Stephen Wagenspack and his crew at the Capitol on Friday night. There's no information whatsoever in any document that was filed to show that that stuff was left or was given to those people at the Capitol. All right, so now in this affidavit on Tuesday, they get Judge Bonnie Jackson, who has nothing in here. Nobody's saying anything. She was had somebody raise their hand and swear under oath that they were telling the truth and claiming to be a law enforcement officer. So she had no way of knowing anything any different. So they get a search warrant supposedly listing all the stuff that they saw or even looked at Friday night, and maybe even Saturday and Sunday. I mean, I have no way of knowing, but I know that they were there in my office Friday night. So they got all this stuff listed like it's some big deal, and included in there that they say they have to go to the office. My office to get is the laptop, thumb drives, and all kind of stuff that they got out of my car and stuff. They listed all that in the warrant to say that they have to go get all that at my office. Now again, they got every bit of it, everything except the documents, and I'm not sure they didn't take that Friday night, but let's just say they didn't. But the paper documents. But they have everything in that search warrant that they say they have to go get, they already have. So now they have a big parade, news media, everything, going to my office and searching my office. And then the next day file in, again, in an affidavit form, swearing as a public record that what they filing is absolutely the truth. Because, I mean, when you say an affidavit, it's not, well, I think I may perceive, or in my law enforcement experience, I believe this may be the fact. That's not what it is. It has to be a proven deal. Now, the main thing that they're using in the affidavit, and I'm going to read it as it is, and again, this is Shane Evans, the Inspector General agent, writing it here, but there's no way that he did all this on his own or without the oversight and support Tom Bolton, Greg Farris, and Stephen Street himself, and maybe even possibly the people at the governor's office that they had directives from to use whatever means necessary to smear me whatever way they could. But anyway, Yora Fine is an investigator employed with the Louisiana Office of State Inspector General and is a sworn law enforcement officer. Now, that's been challenged a couple of times since then, too, as far as a sworn law enforcement officer. That's another deal for another time. On or about the week of August the 9th, 2010, OIG investigators were contacted by Miss Kelly Swear, who advised that she was a former employee of the Louisiana Office of Alcohol and Tobacco Control. While employed there from March 2007 until November 2009, she provided a statement indicating that she had been stalked and harassed by Painter during and after her employment at Louisiana ATC. Now, I had been so-called investigated twice by the Department of Revenue on similar, not close to that, similar allegations by the same person, and found that it was not true. It was all false information, and that there's no way that anything close to that ever took place. Now, that's the main statement that led me to file suit against Kelly Swear, and also to know that there was some rotten stuff in Denmark as far as all this stuff goes. So anyway, 3 years later, after I was found not guilty, thank goodness, because my civil stuff was put on hold while after the Inspector General and the U.S. Attorney's Office decided to indict me. But 3 years later, Shane Evans under oath, we have him called as a witness to testify against, and give information against Kelly Swear about her giving that false statement. Well, you could hear 29,000 pins drop in that federal courthouse after he was put under oath and asked the question, where's the statement
Bingo.
that Kelly Swear gave you, that you indicating, swearing in this search warrant that Kelly Swear gave you? And he looks around and says, she never gave me a statement saying that. She never gave me a statement saying that. I added those words to what she said.
And he admitted that under oath.
1,000%.
Wow.
Under oath. Now, there was some more to that. It's all transcribed. Anybody feels like going and get it, I have a copy of it. But be that as it may. Next, when we get Kelly Swear on the stand, when Kelly Swear is asked, because she didn't file suit against me until the Inspector General put this in their affidavit that was made public. Then all of a sudden she added, or she not added, she took what the Inspector General put in their affidavit. Her and her lawyer put that in an affidavit in a lawsuit against me. And that's what she wound up dealing with, and we explained that. That's a whole nother story too. But the state wound up settling with her without ever putting her under oath. And according to a lawyer, because she needed to get out of town from Baton Rouge, and they paid her somewhere close to $100,000 without ever putting her under oath or having her swear that affidavit that they filed for that lawsuit was valid. So again, 3 years later, she gets on the stand. She's finally put under oath and asks the question, tell us about this statement here. I never gave Shane Evans a statement. I never said Murphy Painter stalked and sexually harassed me. That never happened. I never said that.
Wow.
Now, wow is a good word. I've already been indicted. My whole career is ruined over this BS that's being fabricated or was fabricated in this situation. And again, here is the return to the search warrant where Shane Evans is swearing or saying that on that date, now I don't, it would have been all right. Let's say they picked all that stuff up on the 13th, and then Monday or Tuesday they decided that, oh, well, we should have got a search warrant first, but we didn't need one because it was all state property,
Right.
and we had rights to that deal, and so we just picked it up, and now we need a search warrant because we think there's a crime involved. We're going to go into this. Well, that would have been fine and dandy if they'd have told this judge that, Judge, we picked up all that stuff on the 13th. Some of it was picked up by the governor's office.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it was picked up by us in a search of a legal search as owners of the property from his office. We have it in the office in Baton Rouge, or Inspector General's office in Baton Rouge, and now we need to search it. That would have been fine and dandy. But there's only two reasons that I know that didn't happen, or why it didn't happen. And to me, it's real plain and clear, real simple. Number one, they didn't want the governor's office mixed up in the news media, involved in my so-called firing or resignation because of all the other stuff that I done shared with you 100 times in the past 11 years that was going on with investigations, real critical and serious investigations that was going on, legal and above board in our office. But the other thing is, and again, not till 2 years later or whatever else, they never would give me access back to my computer. We got a copy of what they claim was on the computer. Now, I wanted access to the computer to see if somebody fooled with it. Never did get that, never was granted the right to do that. But 4,000 plus files were erased off of my computer. And that is the reason why that they did not want anybody to know that computer was picked up on the 13th, and they wanted it to think that they was picked up doing a search warrant deal. 4,000 files was taken off my computer. Every piece of information that I could have used to defend myself was missing off that computer. My governor's office file that I kept every time I was contacted by the governor's office or called the governor's office or dealt with them, I put a file, not for any other reason other than good business, that was an important thing for me to do. I did it for 3 governors, not just one. I had more than 3 files on Anheuser-Busch issues that were pending. We can rehash that anytime.
That's the parent company, Budweiser.
Yeah, Budweiser. Anybody else wants to deal with that down the line, or if we run into something later, we can specifically talk about each one of those incidents if that's what somebody wants to hear, because each one of those is a 45-minute story in itself too. But one of the main things that's missing off my computer is early on, right before I left, Chris Nakamoto had filed a Freedom of Information request to get my Outlook calendar of people that I were meeting or whatever else. Now again, there's an onus behind that, and Kelly Swear in federal court again admitted that she had gone to Chris Nakamoto and with information from Brant Thompson and Lewis Thompson, or at the onus of those two people, once she had left the office, to try to give him information so that he could do a number on me. And the only reason that I can foresee that taking place was because I had an internal affair investigation going on with a number of members inside my office, and that those people were trying to do everything they could to derail that investigation. And some of it involved all this other stuff that we talked about, or whatever else along the line with that. But anyway, so now my outlook, which was being sought at before I got fired, it's missing. Totally 1,000% missing when I get my computer back. Ironically, we didn't start using Outlook till 2007 maybe, or 2008. All my telephone records, which every phone call that came into my office was logged into a log. And once Outlook came in, it was a dual system, because Outlook would have most of them, or they'd have a book that we kept for specific purposes of exactly what this is going on here. I wanted everything to prove that if somebody called me, there wasn't going to be any doubt whether I was keeping records of that. Because unfortunately, a lot of people don't understand alcohol beverage law, and I was getting 40, 45 phone calls a day, 60 emails a day, and I was tending to all of them. I was serious about the job I had.
Sure.
I took it very, very important. But most of those people calling were asking for stuff that wasn't legal. And mainly because they didn't understand the law.
Okay.
Now, I had to discern whether they were doing it wanting something illegal, or whether they were doing it out of, lack of a better word, ignorance of the law. But the point of it is, every time somebody called me from the governor's office, every time somebody called me from any office, judges call me, federal agents call me, U.S. attorneys call me during my tenure there, and every time that they would, I would log or document the fact that they did it. And if it was something serious that was discussed, or wanting me to offset something, or approach something some kind of way, then I ran checks to show, and have another document to show that I took some diligence during that time to identify the people that are calling me on the telephone to be legitimate people, and also to document the fact that if it come up 2 years later, 3 years later, or somebody accusing me of something that I allegedly did wrong, that I had some paper trail of backup to show exactly what the reason was, or why it was done. So again, ironically, all those things are gone, missing off my computer. Now, the last thing on this return to search says that they picked up telephone reports. Telephone reports.
I'll give you just. All right. Got it focused in. Sure.
Now, I'm sitting here telling you 3 years of defending myself, begging and pleading to get my records, which were kept from me for absolutely as long as possible, and never got everything that I was supposed to get, that I have never seen a telephone report.
Wow.
Since I left my office on August the 13th. And that would have been the main thing to show and prove all this stuff that they talking about. Oh, I ran people in the governor's office. Well, background checks. Well, that was a lie in itself. Every office, that state office you go to, probably except ATC, has a guard to get in the building, and you got to produce a driver's license to get in the building, or a good ID to get in the building. Now they make a copy of that, whether you realize that, and the technology is such that they can take that check and run it through to verify what's on the computer. You got a code on there and everything else. Also, which come out in trial, ironically, because we didn't have any guards at the door or whatever else. That's another reason that anybody that wanted to see me about something that was of a particular nature that I documented, I ran a check on them to show that they existed as a real person, and that's who was in the office talking to me at that particular time. Well, all of a sudden, I mean, it's supposed to be a crime for me to do that. It come out in trial finally. I mean, on one of the days we were there, we'll talk about it a little more later, but it comes out in the trial that the governor's office, before you can see the governor, they run a full background check on you. State police, got a state policeman perched outside his office, and they run checks on everybody. So I don't know how the hell, I'm the head of a law enforcement agency trying to do the right thing, been doing the right thing for 15 years in that office, how all of a sudden something can be illegal for me to do and it's not illegal for anybody else in the world to do exactly the same thing. But anyway, so I think that's the main thing I want. Again, these LSU law students, the future law enforcement people in the world, because when I used to teach at the Basic Training Academy, at 2 different basic training academies in the state, and I would always tell the police officers that were in the audience with me, if you got to start lying in order to make a case, now I'm not talking about telling somebody something in an interview to make them believe you have more evidence than you have. I'm talking about when you start documenting stuff in affidavits that are outright 1,000% lies. There's no way in hell that anybody can argue that it's anything but a lie. When you have to start doing that to make a case, maybe you the crook.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe you just happen to be the crook, and you know exactly who I'm talking about. But anyway, so that's that deal. Now, okay, so I'm the number 3 news story in Baton Rouge in 2010, and all of it is mainly based on the affidavit that Shane Evans files openly in the clerk of court's office when every law of the Inspector General's office, every rule, every policy of the Inspector General's office says that you do not release anything that has to do with an Inspector General investigation to the public until the governor signs off on a report that they issue. Most of the time takes 6 or 8 months, maybe even longer than that. Mine took from August to February of the following year before they issued a report. But here he is, and he didn't do this on his own. No way in hell he done it on his own. Here he is writing or putting a bunch of lies in a public record and then telling every newsman in the world to go get the public record. I'm not saying he did that. I'm saying somebody did tell the news media. Okay? So this is what I'm dealing with for the following year. I'm trying to get all my stuff together, prove this and that and the other, and there's not one thing that happens or that I find that following year, from August to August, that was anything different or that anybody had anything on me that I had done anything wrong, that I was supposedly being accused of. Now, I filed suit against the Inspector General and his people, and I filed suit against Governor Bobby Jindal and his office in August of 2011. Records again that I got later in life, 2 years later, show that nobody was investigating me based on the Inspector General report, or which let's be completely honest, okay? If I had done anything that they are purporting that I did. It's the state police's responsibility as the agent of record of all that information that is basically FBI information and other law enforcement agency information that's put in that computer system. The state police is responsible for that, and if the state police should be the one investigating it and should be the one that, again, is making any accusation of any wrongdoing. Never happened. The next thing is, if it's the FBI, if this is federal now all of a sudden because it's a NCIC situation, then the FBI is the one that's supposed to, or should be, in any normal situation, should be the one to do it. I explained before, I don't remember if it's here or otherwise, within a week of this happening to me, I was at the FBI office in Baton Rouge, laying everything out and showing them 1,000% and said, whatever you need for me. If you think I've done something wrong, I don't have a lawyer, I don't need a lawyer, I haven't done anything. Here it is. And the FBI didn't want anything to do with this, zero. They had nothing to do with this. And so a year goes by, like I said, and now all of a sudden I file suit, and now we're going to have court where, guess what? People get put under oath in court. They get put under oath, and you're supposed to tell the truth. And as an investigator for over 50 years, I mean, a half-truth is hard to defend. But when you get somebody under oath, when they lie, it's real simple to prove that somebody's lying. Once you get that record or whatever it is, it's real simple, or easier, let's say, to do that. So anyway, so my life was wrecked and ruined, and I know it brings some people thrill to hear me say that, but my life was wrecked and ruined over all this stuff. I decide, well, I got to move on. I got to make a living. I'm still in my late 50s at that time. I want to still make a mark on things positive if I can somewhere. So my only option, because there wasn't nobody gonna hire me, they put baggage on me that obviously put baggage on me that 43 not guilty counts, not guilty rings in a federal court can take away. So I decided to apply for my private investigator's license, and I go down and meet with the executive director. He looks at everything, and the main question he had was, well, have you ever been convicted of anything? Well, absolutely not. I said, well, you ain't gonna have no problem with this. Now, I know 1,000% for sure he was intricately knowledgeable of the Inspector General's report when he gave me that information saying that I wouldn't have any problem under normal situations of getting a private investigator license. Now, guess what comes with a private investigator license? Oh, well, you get a license to investigate. You also get access again to all those databases and all the stuff that they claim that was an issue, or that somebody could use to prove or disprove something a whole lot easier than if you don't have access. But anyway, so I pay my money, I get put on the board agenda, and I go up there thinking I'm going to get my license. Now they say I qualify for an agency license. At that time I had 34 years law enforcement experience. I'd been a chief deputy for 15 years in Ascension Parish. I'd been head of a full-fledged statutory law enforcement agency for 15 years. I'd worked in the Attorney General's office as an investigator, where I had a Deputy U.S. Marshal's commission and worked in the FBI office in New Orleans for 4 years. I thought I was qualified, but lo and behold, when my turn come up in the meeting, the chairman, without any rhetoric from anybody else or any input, uh, uh, to argue or to say why, he makes a motion before anybody can say anything on my application, that he makes a motion that my application be denied because I'm not qualified. Now, I mean, you know, that's pretty good blow, but it shows you the extreme of based on what I just told you, that all of a sudden I'm not qualified. Now, I don't want to go into the 10 people that got their licenses approved before I got there and what their qualifications were or not, but let's just say I asked to speak and was denied the opportunity to speak before that group, and I went then to the staff, and well, I went out in my car. They said I wasn't qualified because even though I was head of a law enforcement agency, I hadn't done any actual investigation in the past 15 years. So I went out in the car and got the law book, the alcohol, tobacco control law book, and in the first almost couple chapters it says that the commissioner is empowered and is to investigate each and every alcohol beverage licensee for its suitability. It doesn't use the word suitability, for that it qualifies for an alcohol beverage license under all state laws, and that you have to check the background, the criminal history background, in order to do that. Now, I brought that book back in that day, showed it to everybody at a break, and left them a copy of the book, and they said they wasn't dealing with it anymore today, and I went home. Well, a week or so later, I get a call from someone up there that says, well, Mr. Painter, you wouldn't believe this, but we went back and checked the tape, and there wasn't a proper quorum whenever your application came. So just act like that last meeting didn't happen. Now we're going to go to another meeting. You're going to be put on the next meeting's agenda, but we want you to understand now the issue is going to be that you're going to have to defend the Inspector General's report.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so whoa, here we go. So I go there. I said, well, do me a favor. Just make sure that someone from the Inspector General's office is there that's going to raise a hand under oath and swear to the allegations that's in that report. That's all I asked of you.
Sure.
Well, obviously at the next meeting, nobody was there from the Inspector General's office. Somebody brought the Inspector General's report before the board. They said, recommend that it be denied based on the Inspector General's report. I got a chance to speak and said, gentlemen, ladies, everybody that was there, you know, I said, I've been in law enforcement all my life, just about all my adult life. But I've been to law enforcement schools everywhere in the country. So now what you people are telling me is that the Inspector General of the state of Louisiana can declare me guilty of something by a report. Now, I don't, how can him writing a report deny me of certain rights that I allegedly have in the other deal without, I mean, let's bring him here, here.
Yeah, right.
And let him make an allegation before this board and let me defend that allegation. And let's see who's telling the truth and who's not. And then if you find that I'm not telling the truth based on evidence, well then, you know, deny what the hell you want. But anyway, so anyway, they denied it again. Well, after they denied it the second time, I have a right to an appeal. Well, in the appeal, I get subpoena power.
Look out.
I don't have an attorney. No attorney, nothing. I'm doing all this myself. I hadn't done anything wrong. I don't need an attorney. I think I'm on the right path. So I spent about $3,000 issuing subpoenas and having them served on the OIG's office, on all the people made allegations allegedly against me in the OIG's report. Just a slew of people that I'm going to give every opportunity in the world to finally be put under oath and given the opportunity to produce the evidence that they supposedly have. Now, I left out one point after we started talking about me filing suit. Up until that time, I said nobody had been investigating me. Well, either late September or October of 2011, after I filed suit against the Inspector General and the Governor's office, the U.S. Attorney's Office in Baton Rouge, Middle District, issued a subpoena, grand jury subpoena, to ATC for my records.
Okay.
Okay. So now we're back again in February of 2012. I just got subpoena power. I've just subpoenaed all of them. I'm gonna put them all under oath and give them all the opportunity to say whatever they say against me, and go from there. Well, it was the end of February. I have the date. I got all of it. I got 3 sheds of documents. But anyway, the beginning of March, a couple of weeks into March, a week after I issued those subpoenas, 2 Inspector General investigators come to my aging, because she would die if I'd say elderly, but my aging mother's house, in her late 80s at that time, or mid 80s at that time, and tell her they're there looking for me. Now I live on the next street, but you got 2 investigators with the Inspector General's office, and they don't know where I live. They don't know my address. I mean, anyway, you can imagine my mother was fraught with all the other stuff that took place of that. She called me, I told her to send them to my house. They came around and came to my house and issued me a target letter from the U.S. Attorney's Office saying that now I'm the subject or the target of a grand jury investigation, federal grand jury investigation, and listed 5 or 6 federal laws that supposedly I had broken. Now I did go to see a lawyer right after I left from there with the allegation of I had misused federal databases and all that stuff. The 2 lawyers I went to, and I'll save their names for later also, which would be a kick. But anyway, both of them laughed and told me, said, this is all BS. There's no way in hell that you committed any crime or did anything wrong with this, and we wouldn't take your money if or to take the case for you, because there is no case. So anyway, the laws that are in the letter, when I looked them up, I mean, anybody in the United States could be guilty, maybe, if you want to interpret whatever it is. But the bottom line of what it is, the main ones that they charged me with, or what that they were looking, because I wasn't charged yet,
Right.
were, if you look them up, they were anti-terrorism statutes that were passed after 9/11. So now all of a sudden I'm being investigated as an international terrorist for computer tampering, computer fraud, and all kind of crap that is actually unbelievable. And if you go look at it yourself if you don't believe me, and see how much poppycock that we sit here talking about. But anyway, so I called, they had on the letter that I could call the U.S. Attorney's Office and talk to Trish Jones, who was the lead prosecutor on the deal, and that I'd worked with Trish at the Attorney General's office. I thought she was a pretty good girl, lady, and we got along real good then. I did some investigative work for her a couple of times, and I think she knew that I was straight and above board. But anyway, when I called her, and she goes about telling me, I said, well, Trish, you know, I'll be glad. It says here I have an opportunity to testify at this grand jury. I want to testify, and I want to testify without a lawyer. But if y'all are doing this for the intention of indict me, it don't do me any good to go, because you're going to indict me anyway, and then you're going to use what I say and try to turn around what I say against me. If you're using this grand jury as a way to get rid of these ridiculous allegations from the Inspector General's office, and you'll give me the opportunity to provide information and explain it, but it's going to take some hours, it's going to take a few hours to do it, then I'm more than happy to come down there. That's when she told me, she said, it don't matter what you do, you get ready to be indicted.
Wow.
And there's nothing you can do about it. So, lo and behold, here the next month, I mean, that would have been in late March or early April of 2012. Well, in the state business at that time, some of the people that was at ATC, and some of them that gained power by me leaving and thought that they were going to be appointed head of ATC or continue having control of ATC, let's say moved, whether they got run off or not, that's argumentative, but let's say they got moved when the new commissioner got appointed and they didn't stay in power. Well, a group of them wound up at the fire marshal's office. Well, shortly after they arrived at the fire marshal's office, all of a sudden the Inspector General was investigating the fire marshal's office.
I remember that.
So-called criminal investigation, violations, and all kind of stuff. Public again in their new role as this super law enforcement agency. Butch Browning, who was the fire marshal at the time, they
And
made
still
a
is, by
bunch
the
of allegations. He left and went to work at a plant for a while based on the allegations that was there, and then later was appointed again, and mainly because he had a little bit more political influence, so he had a better rabbi than me at the time. But all of a sudden, the OIG allegations was BS, and all that disappeared. Well, that enraged the legislature. And
I remember.
it basically enraged the legislature because Governor General was cutting everything that everybody had at that time, and money was real short. And duplication of agencies was one of the reasons that they were what they were looking for. And the OIG's office duplicates about 3 or 4 of the agency's business, and their need and desire, according to me, as long as they're going to be a political hack, which is all they've ever been, that their position is basically useless in a law enforcement situation or whatever else, because you've got 5 other agencies that have the real authority to investigate it, and the ones that the agency that's supposed to investigate, if those agencies are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, is the Legislative Auditor's Office, who is a very good office and always has been a very good office and producer in this state. They have no law enforcement authority because they're not supposed to have. And in all fairness, the Inspector General's office isn't supposed to have law enforcement authority either, because it conflicts. You can't have a conflict where it says, I can print this and mar somebody on the Inspector General's suspicion, and as a law enforcement deal, when it's all speculation or there's no proof or whatever it is. Anyway,
And just to let our viewers know, not to interrupt you,
Yeah.
but they did not get that quasi-law enforcement authority until 2008. And so they had just basically were all but cutting their teeth on you. And I believe you may have been the very first search warrant ever executed by them.
All the information I could find, they had never issued a search warrant or asked for a search warrant before mine. They asked for a few after that. And each one of them that they asked for after that got them in a hot potato just exactly the same way that mine did, with people making accusations or saying that it was for political purposes. But anyway, so here we are, and I'm going to end this session by leading up to the point. Okay, the House had already thrown out or said they wanted the Inspector General's office gone, and did not fund their budget in House Bill 1. All of a sudden it was supposed to, it was coming up in the Senate 3 weeks, a month later, whatever, and somewhere around May the 24th or the 25th, I don't remember the exact date, but it's right there in that ballpark. Well, lo and behold, the whole reason they wanted disavow them or get rid of them because they had never made an investigation that amounted to anything. All this money they were supposed to bring in, all this stuff they were supposed to do, not one penny, not know anything that they had done anything of any consequence. And so the day before, or the evening before that vote was supposed to come up in the Senate Finance Committee, whether to fund them or not, the U.S. Attorney announces a 43-count indictment against me.
Wow.
And the next morning in committee, the Inspector General is going around passing out front page newspaper articles about how great he is and how big and bad I am, that he had to uncover all my wrongdoings and stuff, and that for that reason they needed to give him his money back in his budget, which they did. So I'm going to leave y'all with that at this particular time, and we'll pick up after that in the next segment.
Well, thank you so much again, Murphy, for joining us today. That was installment 4. I believe everybody's going to look forward to hearing installment 5. So we hope everyone enjoyed an enjoyable Mardi Gras, and we look to see you soon for installment 5 of our series with former Alcohol and Tobacco Control Commissioner Murphy Painter.
God bless.